For those that haven't joined our AMAs before, and actually I think a lot of you have, we like to keep these really casual. We do have a planned discussion guide ready, but we want to put preference on questions that are submitted. So throughout the chat, drop your questions in the chat. My colleague Sydney will be in the chat making sure that we try to answer them. So we want to have a really engaging discussion, and we're really excited to have Z here to share her time. So we want to allow you all to ask lots of questions of her. Before we introduce Z and let her kind of share some intro thoughts, wanted to introduce myself. I'm Lauren Gibson. I'm the content marketing manager at Rally. If you don't know what Rally is, we're a user research CRM to help organizations streamline and automate participant management and recruitment and get access to their own users for research. So really excited to have Z here, and I will now turn the time over to her to introduce herself and share some intro thoughts.
Awesome. Thank you, Lauren. And for those who don't know me, I'm Z. I can talk about design ops, research ops all day long. And that's why I'm so excited to have this opportunity to talk to you all about design ops and the research ops. So I don't have a long presentation. This is an AMA session for you to ask questions, but I want to set up some very baselines for y'all and where we're going to start with. So I'm going to go through a few slides to talk about what is design ops. And I don't know how many of you know about design ops. And definitely, if you do a Google search, there are so many different definitions. So this is the one I like, and it's published by Frog Design. So it says design ops is a human centered approach to building stronger design teams that support orchestration of individuals, processes, and the tools to amplify creativity and the impact at scale. So that caps overall what design ops is about. And you probably have the question, and what does design ops do, right? So if you ask any design ops practitioner, you probably get an answer all very different. And you're going to get this answer that you might hate. It depends. But overall, here's some highlights of what we do. And this is a resource provided by Nelson Norman Group, have a very high level description about what design ops do. So basically it talks about we work on how we design group and people work together. So that's about organize, about collaboration, about humanize. But if you go onto the website, it will have a more detailed descriptions. What does it mean, organize everything? And then we also focus on how we get work done and focus on how our work creates impact. That kind of if you think about how we get work done, we think about from an operation perspective, how we standardize things, how we harmonize the team, how we prioritize work with our design leaders. And if you think about talking about impact, right? So that's part of the talking about impact is measure success using all the numbers to talk about what we do, and that also socialize our work, the design team's work, and also enable the team. So that's high level what design ops do. And part of today's AMA, we also want to focus a little bit about research ops, right? So what is research ops? So what I'm thinking right now, talking about research ops is from this perspective, support research in any organization. And the role for research ops is to streamline research and maximize its impact. Very similar to design ops and maximize the impact. That's really important. A lot of time when we think about research ops, we tend to think about, panel recruiting, right? So that's something on top of your mind. But a lot of time, actually, we forget about so many other aspects. The design ops, research ops in particular, will support a team, can support a team with, right? So a lot of things that research ops practitioners will do will be advocacy, competency is also really important, enabling the team and educate the team, onboarding the researchers and onboarding people. And also think about tooling. Tooling is a big part of either design op or research op. Tooling always matters. And also knowledge, talk about knowledge, whether it's collecting knowledge or sharing knowledge with the researchers or whoever doing research in the organization, right? And the last thing is not least, right? So governance, that is something that research op work closely with our legal team and everything to think about all these things. These are the things needs to be done in especially a larger organization, sometimes overlooked. So this is what I'm talking about today when we think about research ops. And in a nutshell, right? So this is how I look at operations. Design op is really a service design to the design organization or the product experience organization. And I always see the operation practitioners are the connective tissues, connecting all parts outside, inside design org. And really is get things done. That's what we help the org, right? So that is my very high level pitch about operation. So then we can start the questions and answers.
Amazing. Thank you for doing that. And it's awesome to see like design ops and reops quickly defined together. And I really love thinking about it as connective tissue. I want to steal that. That's amazing. And so true. Like it's crazy. And I think like a lot of organizations don't realize the power of design ops and reops to be that connective tissue. And it's always underlying. It's just how do you prove that it's or show that it's connecting everything. So amazing. Thank you for laying that foundation. I'd love to first, before we dive into a little deeper, hear a little more about you. I'd love to hear your background and how you came to lead the design ops function at Cloudflare.
Of course. So I came from a design background. I was traditionally trained as a graphic designer way back. And then eventually I moved into more of the product design role. And that I went about, did a lot of other things, and then found my love in the operation world. So when I started to do operation, there wasn't really a practice or a discipline called design ops or anything. And but people are always doing it, right? So for in the history, if you think about, I worked for agency for a while as well. So there's always someone doing the operation. Maybe it's not the name of design ops, but eventually only recently, I would say last 10 years or so, design operation became a labeled discipline. And it is a really exciting world for me. So I eventually gradually moved from the product design side to operation side, actually, to support teams and sharing my knowledge to get things done, working with pairing with the design leaders, doing more operation work. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, and I'd love to hear a little too of what the design ops org looks like at Cloudflare, and also what kind of the research org and research ops org looks as well.
Yeah. I would always tell people having a design ops org or a function within the design org is a luxury, but it's a necessity. And if you think about at Cloudflare, what we have is that we have a product experience team. We actually roll up to the product team, and that I support our design leaders. And for the longest time, when you think about any other organization as well, design ops is a design ops team of one. I was a team of one for a long, long time, right? So that is very common. And I know that I'm going to reference this report a lot. Last year, I led a group of people did a design ops assembly benchmark, design ops benchmarking report. We find out majority of teams are still teams of one, or um, even more than half probably is like a very small team. And design ops is always a supporting function. And so for us, research ops actually roll up to the design ops. It depends. In some other organizations, if you have a really large, mature research team, research ops might actually either roll up to research, or you have really matured org, ops might all roll up to one place.
Interesting. Yeah, and I think many people in this AMA will resonate with being a small team or a team of one. It's very, very common. And so and those pain points are very, very intense and felt by everyone. So as I already said, it's interesting to see those ties between reops and design ops. Amazing. I'm curious, last thing on kind of your role at Cloudflare, but what does a typical kind of day look like for you? And what are kind of your big tasks and roles as head of design ops?
Sure, and it varies again. But if you think about ops role, right? So we focus on people, we focus on practices, we focus on platform. So my day is really divided by all these tasks. So I start my day actually by triaging all the requests coming to my way and everything to the ops way, and figure it out. But early morning, I tend to focus more on the people coordination part because our team split between US and EMEA area. So that is the golden area time that we have overlapping. And I carve that time out with talking with people. I have a lot of one-on-ones, talking to people inside our team, outside our team. And then later on in the afternoon, it's more of the time I need a heads down time and focus on, need a big chunk of my time to focus on whatever the project we're working on. And I think with my boss, our design leader, our VP of design, 3 times a week, so that we align all the work that we do within the org as well. So that's also important part of my day or week. Because the design ops are always pairing with supporting our design leaders, the need of the team. So those are the typical day, I would say. And then,
Yeah.
of course, there are off days and everything off the schedule.
Yeah, and I'm sure like I feel like small teams and also like newer functions like design ops and reops, there's just so many like new things popping up. Like you're always constantly figuring out what is my role, what are we doing, and where you're supporting such a huge like design is important to an entire org, research is important to an entire org. That's a lot of people you're trying to collaborate with, and I like that you called out too the relationship building. I think that's a huge part of ops roles that people don't necessarily think about is you are building relationships, and that's how you can increase impact and how you can increase the visibility of your work. So amazing. I would love to dive deeper into kind of initiatives at Cloudflare. Could you share some examples of some successful design ops projects or initiatives at Cloudflare and kind of how you worked through those?
Of course. So if you think about design ops, right, and going back to talk about we focus on people, practice, and the platform. So some of the very interesting project or program we did throughout my years at Cloudflare, when you think about people, and I pair with our design leaders and to think about career ladders for our team, right? That is one thing on top of every practitioner's mind. How do I grow in a team? So that's really part of a focus on people. And also, if you think about design ops, the role is really supporting the education continue growing in people side, right? So we implemented Growth Week, which is a mini conference within our org, and it's a week actually opportunity for our designers to learn from outside experts, inside experts. Also, it's an opportunity for us to talk about what our design, our product experience team, what we do, our capabilities, and to really advertise for our work as well. That's the socializing part of talking about the value of the design opportunity as well. So that's one of the really important initiative. And since we're also focusing a little bit on the research operation side, so another thing we did is really evaluating our research tooling and depends on our need, right? So every org is different. Do you have a large research group or do you have your designers to do research? Do you have both? And then depend on what you have, and then the tooling support will be different. So we did an audit of our tooling, and we deprecate some tools and we introduce some new tools to support our team. And that is also another really important project we did. And that's how we actually eventually was able to spin up a formal position for research ops.
Oh, amazing. I didn't know that. That's really cool. How valuable did it find to have that connection between reops and design ops for the tooling? Do you feel like that made the process of finding the right tool, implementing that tool a lot smoother because there was that connection between the two functions?
I believe so. And again, the organization structure at Cloudflare are probably different from yours and the other people's whatever. So for us, we are still a very small team overall, right? So our research op is really grow eventually the needs and then came from the research from coming from the design operation side, but some other orgs you have a larger groups and everything, you have a more established research ops, but aligning tools are important because that actually not only just using tools to do research and then to align with the product development process as well, right? So, and then also that depends on the tools you use and where we share information and where we actually find insights. Those are very important, right? So where we recruit from all different panels, is there a same place that we're all recruiting from? We don't also tag tag people multiple times, and that won't work as well. So aligning the design operation, research operation, actually really aligning with the product design, product experience process, it's really important.
Totally. And I'm sure it saves later headaches when you're
Uh-huh.
from the get-go working together.
Yeah.
We have some great questions in the chat. I want to pull up. One is from Lauren. Great name, by the way. She says, curious what the biggest challenges we're advocating for research resources. And I think we can also lump in tooling there, and any helpful tips in navigating.
Okay. Advocating for research resources, and or I assume resources including people, tooling, all these things, right? Where we get the money for that, it's not easy. Advocating for any people tooling is not, it's not easy in organization. So I can talk a little bit about what we did, right? So we when I came to Cloudflare, we had we had one researcher at the time, and then we didn't have a researcher for a while, and then when we don't have a researcher, then we have to really focus on having our designer do some of the research with the best capability they have. So how to support that, right? So I know we hate the word of it, democratizing research, and it's not really about just democratizing research. It's more about who is doing research. When we don't, ideally, we have a research work to support the product experience team, but when we don't, then the best we could do was getting designers to do the research. And then what do we do, right? So really, we have to look at education, we have to look at tooling. So that's how we were able to advocate for some budget to get the tooling ready. So then once we got the tooling ready, we have a designers do research. Then we see there's limitations. Designers are designers, right? So we are not researchers. So their expertise. Researcher is an expert in researching everything. So we had an opportunity, just things happen as well. So able to hire researcher back. And then so now we have a full-time researcher as well. The ratio is still not ideal, but then that's a starting point. So we're able to advocate for budget, have a head count for researchers. So it goes spiraling away, goes up to make progress for 2 steps and backwards for a step, and then we make progress for another 2 steps and everything. So it's not straightforward, but it's about showing, demonstrate value of incorporating research into the process. So there's a lot of needs to be done. Even when designers doing research, we have to think about the tooling, how to think about the process to support designers to do more of the research.
Great, great. Thank you. And before we kind of move on, back to, you had mentioned one big initiative at Cloudflare was creating career ladders, which is top of mind for everyone. How do I progress? And Alexandra had a question.
Mm-hmm.
How do you measure learning and growth programs for the team, and what are/were the goals there?
Interesting. Measuring learning and the growth programs. So that is, you have to have a learning and growth programs to start with, right? So, and that is always, it's a challenge because if you think about the team growth, right? So designers a lot of our practitioners are very busy. And actually before we can even have a growth program, we have to think about allocation, to think about, are we allocating people's time 100%? And some places 110%, or even over 100%. That's impossible, right? So, but then that is the reality. Sometimes they're over allocated. So to start with that, we actually started looking at thinking about allocation, how we can actually carve out time for people to learn. And so you should not allocate people 100%. It should maybe 80% for say designers, and then maybe even lower 60% for your senior designers. So that difference is for the senior designers, for the more advanced, more senior people to have time to teach as well. So you have to have this in place. Then we can think about the growth program. And then we actually did an assessment to see what kind of a skill people need, and then start to carve out a sliver on our leveling guide that you have to meet certain criteria for your level, but then you have a little sliver that you can actually develop what you're interested in within your discipline. And then, so we give people the space, opportunity to learn. And then you can actually put that into the leveling guide as one of the activities that our individual contributors and then their managers will look at. Oh, I said I will do this. I will say take a course, or I will read a book, or I will conduct a training for other people. Actually, teaching is learning as well, right? So did I do it? Then you can check it and then see if I did it, then you move on to the next thing to do. So it's not just a simple step. There's a lot of foundation you need to build to allowing people to have the space to grow and learn in that program. So that's how we did it. I wouldn't say it's by a strict number, but if you think about OKR and it's measurable still, did I do it, right? So did I do it by the time I say 6 months or a year? Did I do it? That's how we're doing it.
Amazing. Yeah, and Alexandra had a follow-up. At Cloudflare, did you make the learning required, or is it kind of a little more guided by the desires of individual team members?
It's more guided by desire of the individual contributors and person, and it's not required. But we provide opportunities for people to do this, right? So we have a professional develop small, very, very, very small professional develop budget, so they can buy books, they can take a course, and then we also support people on different level to go to conferences, and then we support our individual contributors to do talks and give people time. If we don't have the money, we provide people time, opportunity to do these things.
Amazing. Great. We have a great question from Dennis. How do you balance ambitious initiatives versus small wins?
How to balance ambitious initiatives versus small wins. So we obviously, as a product experience team, working with the delivering, shipping, everything, and at Cloudflare, we have a lot of large initiatives throughout the year, right? So all the product org will work towards those big initiatives, and we have those big initiatives that are time box. A certain time of year we do a lot of blogs about our big initiatives. One thing coming up is what we call birthday week, and that's actually our every year annually big event for the Cloudflare. We have a lot of product that we will be shipping. We're going to talk about forward-looking product and a lot of things. Those are the big initiatives. So that's a little bit more planned. But small wins, some of our team, one of our team, which is on the developer experience side, they have this literally called quick wins week. So they carve out quick win weeks every quarter, and that's engineers, PMs, and designers all work together. So individuals will propose a certain kind of a small quick win projects, and then they do. It's almost like a sprint, right? So 1 week sprint, everyone get it down and then fix the design that or whatever that they want to work on. So that's how we're doing it. It's not cross-board yet, but we're pushing more about for other teams to adapt this practice.
Amazing. Thank you. Hopefully that is a good answer for you, Dennis. We have, this is kind of switching gears a little, but I want to do a question from Dan that he had earlier. How does DesignOps interact with the design system team? If you have any thoughts there.
Design system team, it's always a question for design ops people. Again, this actually maps back to the maturity of the design or the experience team. Because what happens that when I started as a design ops lead, and so I actually oversee the design system team. So in a lot of a practice, it's common that design system will actually roll up to design ops, and because that's very design system is a very small team. And then as we mature and we see the needs to grow, and then also it's one of the focus and initiatives that maps up to our company goal. So right now we have a full design system team, and that they're parallel now, so they report to the VP as well. I report to the VP. Our design system team roll up to VP as well. So our design system team now have a designer, have an architect, have actually 3 engineers on the team as well. So they can actually to do more, I would say, um, planned, holistic approach to the design system, everything. So that is how we structure right now. So you can see that interaction will be different now. Instead of a leading, now we are supporting the design system team. So design, we will be the operation side will be looking at can we support design system with design program manager to help them to do their daily activities. And then if we don't have that headcount, can we actually borrow from technical program manager side to support our team? And can we help them with intake process? Can we help them to schedule talks and to advocate for their work and everything? So that's our current interaction with design system team. It definitely changed throughout time.
Great, thank you. Thanks for the question, Dan. We're going to move forward because there's a lot of questions in the chat that align with this topic, but everyone's favorite topic, impact. So just to start, curious what strategies you've employed at Cloudflare and in your design leadership roles to leverage design ops for greater impact of both design, research, and product as well.
That's a lot. Design, research, and the product and everything, right?
You can focus on one for now. I know I just threw a big question at you.
Yeah. So if you think about really, again, maturity, right? So how you started. When I started, a small team focused more on advocate for the design per se, right? So, but a lot of time that is not even at the level of advocate for what we do. It's really we have to like get our house in order. I partner with our design leader to figure out how we can actually work out a system instead of just a reactive team to a more proactive team, right? So then we have to spend a lot of time to talk about that change, because back then in a lot of work you can see design as a service. It's like people will throw a ticket at the design team. Designers, oh, I'll just do it, check it out, check it out. Then designers doesn't have the opportunity to be more involved on the strategy end, right? So can be strategic when you're just reacting to tickets. So that has to be changed. And how to make that change is not just hey, one day we switch to say we are going to be involved in strategy. That won't work, right? So have to be slowly to think about, again, carving out time. And then from a managers and the design managers perspective, they need to be able to go out to talk with their counterpart to talk about this is how we're going to work. We're going to prioritize the work, and these are the allocations that we have. Only this many people work on this much work and everything. So let's prioritize it. And then we're going to start to say more no. But part of that is explaining why we're saying no to all these projects, right? So then we can focus on more high impact project. And then we got to go out to tell people we're doing this and why we're doing it, how we're doing it, and everything. So design ops is really supporting all these levels at very earlier stage, right? That's still continuous going on, and then even to this day. And then as our team mature, now we have a better structure. We have a more structure within the team, and we have a better understandings from outside the org now. So in terms of research, in terms of design, people are now companies really thinking a lot about research as well, right? Thinking about, okay, voice of customer is important and everything. So at least whether in practice it's done or not, this is the first step. There's awareness right now, right? So we talk about it. And then from a design operation perspective, then we started to think about more how do we articulate and socialize this impact now. So we started our product experience team newsletter. That's one way of doing it, right? So we're talking about holistically as a team, what we're doing in research, what we're doing in design system, we're doing in shipping product and everything. So our newsletter is compiled with all this information sent out to the entire org. Another thing about socialize this is really talk about the value is through our growth week. And then we used to start it from internal design team practice. Now that our growth week is company wide, we invite other people, invite other disciplines come in to talk with us, and then to get them be part of it, and then get everyone be part of this talking about our work as well. So that's another example of how we're socializing, really advocate or advocating for our value as well.
Totally. Yeah, no, that's great. And kind of answers, Jane had a question, and I wonder if you have any other thoughts here of just ways you're also sharing, not just advocating for design, but sharing that actual impact. So when you see an impact, how do you share that out? How do you make it actionable? I'd love to hear any thoughts you have
Mhm.
there.
So sharing the impact of design with the org, more about what you do to share, prove impact. This is kind of a dovetail to what we were talking about. That's the one I would talk about is a more of a higher level from the design operations perspective or research operation perspective, right? Our research operation leads a big part of the training as well. And the example is that we do training and then working with our researcher now to do more of the research training. And one thing is that we train at a different level. So we train the interns from very earlier stage, right? So they come in to get a taste of our practice and everything. We set up sessions to train interns. Now we're working with the product manage group and to talk about how we can train the product management group to talk a little bit more about the research practice and everything. On the design side, thinking about how we are what we do to really to talk about impact is that it's really show. It's not just tell, right? So we show how we work with all the cross-discipline partners, how we can be strategic partners. We invite ourselves in to all those early strategy discussions. Everything is still constantly working on that. Sometimes we still get left out, whatever, but then we invite ourselves in to more of these. And they say, oh yeah, I didn't realize, right? So they don't realize that, then we just keep inviting ourselves in and to make people aware of it. This is what we do as well. And then we run a lot of a workshop as well. So this all from our individual contributors. They run a workshop of examples that we had one designer run a workshop with their particular team. And then there are other product managers uh, came into the workshops. Oh, this is awesome. Can you run this for our team as well? They actually traveled her to other offices and then run the workshop for other teams. And then this is another example. It's really show, not just tell. And to tell as well. You have to continuously talking about it as well, but mostly show what you can
Totally.
do. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. And I think showing allows research and design to become very actionable and proves that, this is something that everyone in an org can be involved in, and like being close to the customer and like having customer centered decisions really requires action, not just understanding or listening to what's being told. So
Mhm.
amazing. We have a couple questions that have come up specifically a little focused on research ops that I want to highlight. So Francesca had this great question. So given the new native research team, how would you demonstrate to senior leadership the value of investing in research operations based on your experience?
So that depends on your researcher and it depends on your research support for that. So I know that researchers want to do research, but not all the researchers have the same approach to research practice, right? So hiring the right researcher for your team is to where to start in a way. So we know what we need, right? What we need is we hired a very, very senior researcher, and we know we need someone to demonstrate how to research for our team. And we know our team with the trajectory and with our headcount, with the growth, we know we're not going to be able to grow our research team to 50 people team overnight or ever even, right? So we know this researcher we hire needs to also be willing to put efforts to educate our designers, educate outside design teams, people who are doing research, how to do research. Again, show, not tell. Our researcher is amazing that they came in and then they actually set up a certain kind of, they definitely did a whole tour of gathering information, and then they went out to talk to all different practices within the company. And we have other type of research teams within the company, not just the UXR. So they talked to the research team, they talked to the customer support team, they talked to the marketing team, and talked to all these teams. First thing is like make people know we have research practice now. And then our research op person also did a training to tell people, oh, these are the tools. We welcome everyone to use it, but you need to go through the training with us. And then we have recorded the materials to share with you and how to do this. So we have to trying to bring people onto the same tool. It's also challenging because part of the thing I know a lot of people think about research is that to really demonstrate the insight or to share the insight, you need to have a repository, you have a one place to gather all this information before you can provide any insight, right? So, but how to put them all in one place is really a lot of legwork. It's with our researcher, with our research ops, talking to people and to say, hey, you're using a Google form. Can we actually change that? Can we put that into the platform we're using? Hey, you're using banner in the application, can we actually use the same link to invite people in to do this? So these are all the things that to demonstrate we're doing things actually meaningful things. And then our researcher also did a company-wide talk really fast, like 5 minutes, kind of highlights that, hey, this is the research. And if you want to learn more, come to talk to us. We opened up a channel for people to ask questions and everything. You see, there's no one size fit all, but also there's no one practice work that we'll have to combine all these methods and to get out there. Make us known is the first step, and then we can make progress.
Totally. I'm curious how much of a role you kind of played in helping give that researcher on your team a platform, since you had already, set up the design ops function. Like, what was your role there, and how have you continued to help increase the value of reops and investment there?
Mhm. So for us, the progress is that really we, as I mentioned, that we didn't really have a formal research ops role, right? So when I'm always pairing with our design leaders, so we know our headcount, we know our hiring practice and everything. So the minute I find out, okay, we're going to have research headcount now, that is awesome. And then I brought in the idea of like also consider full-time research operation, because now we actually have enough work to really support a research practice within our product experience team. So a lot of time people think about headcount, we want to get people to work on this thing. But a lot of time, if you're just hiring additional people, doesn't always warrant a headcount for operation support. But if you are expanding capacities, that's when we need to look at, do we actually can advocate for headcount for that specific practice. So we have the researcher hiring, onboarding, and then we are onboarding full-time research ops as well. So at the same time, so there is a need, and they can work together now on all the research efforts now.
Great, great. There is another question that lines up really well with this from Lauren. What are the biggest disconnects between designers and researchers that you've navigated in getting alignment on research ops?
Yeah. So our situation is not really unique, but everyone's different, right? So our designers are doing a lot of research, right? So then we have a full-time researcher now. So people are really excited. Overall, it's not hard to get designers excited about having researchers for sure, because designers have a fundamental understanding how important that is. But then designers are used to do a lot of their research already, right? So how do we actually get this aligned? Our researcher is amazing that they reach out to people, and then also they're keeping an eye on who is doing what. So from an operation perspective, we have an intake process before we have a researcher, and then when the designers need to run research, they actually issue a request. So I have that oversight, or the research operation have an oversight, say who is doing what, right? So that's why operation is important. It's a connective tissue. That's where it is. You see who's doing what, so you have that oversight. Then you can actually say, hey, before we have a researcher, we are saying, can you all utilize some of the expertise outside? And we have certain kind of services to provide guidance, everything to send them there. Now we have researchers, and then say, can we talk to the research? Can you talk to the researchers to get their eyes on it? And there's certain type of research designers should run on their own with proper education, training, and everything. And there are certain research that the researcher should be running, right? So there are different type of research, exploratory type of research. If we're finding a problem, there's a validatory type of research. So it depends on who's doing what. And it's really inform people. And that's why operations actually really helpful have an operation function, because then we have the oversight. If something got missed, our designers are getting better and better. So, we'll always ping our researcher, because our researcher have office hours that we'll ping them and then to figure it out. But if I see something that people are doing it, and they're not talking to each other, then let's get them connected to talk to each other. Hey, you're doing this research, is that related to a different person doing it? Can you do it together? Is it related? So that's why operation actually becomes really, really valuable. See that across board activities.
Totally. Yeah. So I'm curious, when it comes to, like you said, there is some research that designers should be doing with the right guardrails and kind of
Mhm.
governance. How big of a role do you play as design ops in helping the research ops role kind of manage that?
Mhm.
Curious what that looks like for you at Cloudflare.
Mhm. So in terms of operation perspective, everything again, we didn't have a user researcher for the longest time. This is also very unique. It doesn't work for every org. I came from a design practice. I have years of experience in doing product design, everything, doing the research that designers can do, right? So from at the time before we had a researcher, I'm sort of overseeing some of the research as well, and then trying to set up, working with our research op person that to set up certain kind of say if it's a screener, we set up templates, everything for designers to do. And then we also have very senior designers who are really good with certain researchers, right? So we partner with them to create template. Is a readout template, and then we can share with the group and everything. These are all operational support, and also we providing the tool. Then we also have services coming with certain tooling that they have researchers can do consultation work. When I see people do research as well, can you actually set up a consultation session with the expert outside our group and everything? So these are all operational support, and before we have a researcher. So now we have a researcher again, right? So now it's just, things are changing, and these things are always constantly changing, depends on your org and everything. So now we have a formal research practice team of one in a way, but still, and then I'll pair with our research op person working with our researchers to see if the process also align with the product development process. Everything, is there a ticketing system? Is it the right label? Can we all share using the right label and everything? So that's from the two sides as well.
Awesome. And do you have any tips for, because not every org will have such great collaboration between research
Mhm.
and design ops. Do you have any tips for teams that are trying to increase that collaboration, that, teamwork? What tips would you give them?
So we are people. Operations people focus more on people, right? So people, we need to talk and just really trying to reach out, because sometimes you think, oh, they didn't talk to us about this, whatever. It's not because a lot of times not because they purposely want to leave you out. It's just sometimes it's not a habit and they didn't think about it and everything. And so building that relationship is really the first step. Letting people know, hey, we exist, we do this, let's help each other out, let's collaborate, let's work on things together. Can we align things? And it's really reach out and focus on the people side. I think as an operation person, I think I overtly indexed on people side of all these practices as well, because that's where we operate, really start with talking to people.
Great, thank you. We just got a question in the chat based on your background. Fatima says, interesting background, curious how you would describe the unique perspectives a former UX practitioner can bring to the UX operations role.
Mhm. So a lot of people in the design operation roles are designers, a lot, but not everyone. So some of the design ops people might come from a program management background, and our research ops person actually came from a data science background, everything. So all our experience actually contributes to the operation side of it, right? So it depends. And I always say work with people's strengths and also work with people whose strengths is not your strengths. Right. So that's also important. For me, since I came from a design background, there are a lot of things that I can contribute to the UX practice, everything, because I also came from a strong education background. I taught design before. I taught a lot of different subjects that within design as well. So part of the thing I can contribute to our team is really the education side of it. I don't do hands-on development anymore. I don't ship product anymore. So I help our people. The training and education side is my strength. I can actually contribute to the UX practice. Another thing is that I'm really well connected in the industry and I've been around for a long time. So I see what's going on around the industry, right? So think about the professional development. I will bring that information back. If I'm going to a conference, I'll bring that information back to my team. And if I see a conference out there, I will actually let our team member know, go either participate in the conference or go talk for send in your proposal to these conferences as well. I keep saying teaching is always a learning. I find since I have a very strong education, higher ed background, everything, I find out the best time I learn is by teaching because I have to be able to articulate it very precisely, teach others. So I want to encourage our folks to go out to talk more about what they do as well. So that I think is because I came from a design background. I can do a lot of these things and I can help to set up templates. I can help to set up all these things because I understand it. But if that's not your background, focus on what is your background. You could contribute, say, the program management side of it and partner with designers on doing all these things.
Amazing, thank you. Really great answer and interesting how you can pull unique aspects of your background in, like you were saying, and work to your strengths and also your weaknesses by filling up your team with people that speak to those. Great. I'd love to talk a little bit more about re-ops and design ops and how they kind of intersect. I'd love to hear what you think is your ideal state of the collaboration between re-ops and design ops. Like what would be the ideal you're working toward at Cloudflare?
Mm-hmm. So it's not one or the other, either or, right? So it really depends on your work. For us and our research op actually is part of the design op in a way right now. So that's our situation. So we want to make sure everything we do is all aligned and how we actually, in terms of process, in terms of uh, tooling and all these things in terms of advocate for what we do, it's one team and then we want to do it together, inform each other and actually work together to do it together. But in some other orgs, so if your research op is entirely separate org to your design ops org, it's definitely reach out to the group to figure out what are the alignment, how do we both roll up to the larger teams go, either that's a product team or it's companies go, whatever that OKR you're working on, and then make sure we're aligned. We're working on the same priority. We're working ideally similar process, and if not exactly the same, right? So we need to talk to each other, align as much as possible to work together.
Amazing. Thank you. We are getting close to the end. We have 8 minutes left. I know the time flies. We've had some really awesome questions from the chat, so thank you to everyone for that. But I do want to quickly touch on maturity. You mentioned it a little bit earlier, the maturity of design ops, the maturity of research, and curious kind of how you see the role of design ops in increasing the maturity of research at your org.
So design ops increasing the maturity. No,
Oh,
that's not the right slides
all
actually.
good,
I'm
all good.
trying to. I got a weird blank screen, so you won't be able to show it, unfortunately. But we'll share
No
the
worries.
deck afterwards and let people know. So thinking about the maturity is that we need to assess your maturity first to start with, right? So there are a lot of frameworks out there, and to show different kind of maturity models, whether that is a design maturity model or it is a design or research maturity models. There are so many models there. So whichever the one you pick, go with it and use it to as a starting point. It's okay. And then what you do is you want to see if you're making progress, right? So that's the goal. And then so you could have the same, just using the design maturity model and then build research as part of that as depends on the org again, right? So, or you could use a separate research maturity model to evaluate yourself and trying to, the goal is really not about which model you use. It's really about making progress. How can you move from a lower level to a more mature level? And I think one of the resources that we can share later on is you really it's not going to be, it's same thing like leveling people, right? So it's not going to be even. So if you are, say, if you think about leveling people, if I'm a senior designer, I'm going to be senior on that level for every aspect, which is not true, right? So that's for people. Same thing for organization. So if you define your maturity model and then you measure by people, measure by tooling, measure by advocacy, whatever you're measuring, then you can see that you have like almost like a checkerboard version. Some are more better, more mature. Some maybe are lagging a little bit. But that's okay as long as we're moving that direction. So from an operations perspective, is that working with your research leader, working with your design leader, figure out what is that model we're going to use, right? So that can be even more catered to the specific org, and how do we actually time box it, making progress. See, are we making progress? Make adjustment. If we're not making progress, why? Right? So let's adjust. Make same thing as OKR, wherever you keep adjusting. All these things are really, it's a living document for us to track progress and to see if we're not making progress. We got to address to see why we're not making progress. What can we do to make progress? And so that's what operation perspective can support. Work with the leaders to identify that and figure out.
Totally. And who, like at Cloudflare, like who are you driving that? Who's also involved in those discussions of figuring out how mature are we? What can we do? What are steps? What does
Mhm.
that kind of involvement look like?
So for us, and definitely that operation is more of a supportive role. It's more like a advisor council role to our design leader, and then we heavily depend on our design managers to lead a lot of progress. And the same thing, we have researchers that we depend a lot, have our researcher to lead that role. Where do we want to do? What's the priority? Everything, and then operation will be what do we do? Operationalize that, right? So if it's a one team, especially for the design team, if one team is doing something really great from operations perspective, is that, oh, this is really great, can we share it with more of the other teams? Can we actually, every team start to adapt to it? Can we build some template for it to actually move the rest of the team towards that level and everything? So for us, it's more of a design leaders and design managers, use research leaders, and then we also have very senior um, individual contributors. So they are the very senior high level, the leads of each product. They get together as well. So they will have certain kind of initiatives they want to work. And then they come to the ops. They say, hey, can the ops help certain things? Can the ops help us to structure it? Can the ops to help us to advertise for it or advocate for it? Things like that. So that's how we are working at Cloudflare.
Totally. Last question with maturity. This has come up a lot in discussions about research maturity, but that it does align with the maturity of the business as a whole. Have you seen that to be true in your case and in your career, where the maturity of your organization does greatly affect the maturity of research, the maturity of design? Curious what you think there.
Absolutely, because any of these org cannot stand alone, right? So we all part of the larger org. Our product experience team, part of the product team, part of the larger company team. We also have infrastructure team. We also have innovation team. And all these things that needs to work together. So we always work towards the company. Well, it is work together and also independently. So for us, I would say our design maturity, if you think about design maturity, and rarely you're at a very high mature level. We are still at a stage that we're known and we're well known in the company, but the details of what we do, we still have to continue really advocate for that everything, right? So there's definitely limitations by the org maturity, by the product team maturity, and then the design maturity. But design maturity also can be something that the design or the experience team can focus on. Work with, again, we always talk about work with what's within our capability, what it's in our control, everything, right? So we can make our continuous working on our individual groups and definitely, but we want to make sure our OKR rolls up to the company goal for sure, because that's how we can actually effectively articulate our value. And then we can't be, so we just go rogue, do our thing. And that doesn't help anyone and doesn't help us to be more mature either.
100%. Like you said, it's that connective tissue in so many ways. Well, this has been wonderful. Z, would you like to share how people can find you and continue the conversation with you after?
Absolutely. So if you are curious about doing design ops, and I did have a course produced with the design shot, and then so you can take the course, learn more about exactly about design operations, and also you can find me on LinkedIn. Everything we'll share the deck out and with the readout and everything, so you can find me. Happy to connect with folks on LinkedIn, set up one-on-one chat, and you can find me.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Z. It has been a pleasure. We could have talked for easily another hour, but we want to be respectful of everyone's time. So thank you all for joining. Definitely check out our upcoming AMAs. We have some really awesome women in research and research ops joining us in the next couple months.
Awesome.
But thank you again. We'll be sharing the replay and the recap and all the resources that Z shared. So thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of your day. And thank you again, Z.
Thank you for having me. It's
Of
awesome.
course. It was a pleasure. Thanks, everyone.